I think we have a handle on terrorism to some degree. I think we have less of a handle on cyber issues. I think that our vulnerabilities are significant, and I think the world is really moving in that direction. Over the last 10 years, we've built up quite a substantial capability to address terrorism. As difficult as that sounds, and as difficult as that is, we have really devised and employed strategies, and we've brought resources together to be able to effectively keep, at least to some degree, terrorism at bay from overseas. A new challenge is to address terrorism as it arises within our borders. And the effect of the cyber activity on cyberspace that is exploited to radicalize people in the United States. We saw it in the evolution of the counterterrorism threat, where 10 years ago we weren't so concerned about internet activity. Now it's very common in the counterterrorism realm, internet activity. But in a broader cyber sense, there are vulnerabilities, again, in this country that, again, are just very substantial. And I don't think we're quite up to speed. I don't think that we have addressed those vulnerabilities to date. So not in an offensive manner yet in terms of conducting cyber attacks. But they're using it effectively to radicalize, to reach out, and radicalize and mobilize people around the world. And again, they can do that from a desktop or a laptop in one remote location in Yemen, for instance. So this is becoming more and more common, and quite frankly, very challenging to address. Well, it can only go in one direction, and it is evolving. But each group, I think, is at a different level of technological expertise. Some groups, and I won't name them here, but some groups are quite advanced in terms of their ability to communicate online in encrypted forms and to communicate with operatives, again, in encrypted forms, very sophisticated encrypted forms. So I think it's simple to say, and it's the simple truth that their capabilities are advancing, and I think they realize that that is one of the means that they need to develop in order to survive. I think we're there now. I mean, there is overlap between the divisions. We cooperate. There are cases now that we're cooperating on. I think you will see more of that in the future. I think from a practical aspect, what we're looking to do is to identify people who have been radicalized and who are in the stages of mobilization. With our Constitution and the First Amendment, we have to be careful in terms of sort of strategizing or imagining shutting some of these websites down. But we do need to understand the impact that these websites are having and this sort of activity is having on some of the young people, generally young people who have become radicalized.
So we're dealing with all the same issues we've been dealing with for years and years. I don't think we've made significant strides in better security for our systems. I think we've reached a time where there is no such thing as a secure system, and that everybody, companies, entities, corporations need to understand they're going to be hacked. They may not know they're hacked, and they may have to be prepared to understand they may not have access to the information that they have. That being said, we're seeing some new emerging trends that I think are troubling. We're seeing more advanced attacks on mobile phones, on tablets. We're seeing attacks to the critical infrastructure. We're seeing attacks to SCADA systems, process control systems, those tools and monitoring devices that control our critical infrastructure. Assistant Director Bolter is exactly right. We haven't kept pace as a community, as a cybersecurity community, or as a nation, or with our global partners on the cyber threat. So after 9/11, we did a great job of what-ifing, of going through the hypotheticals, of table-topping exercises, of figuring out what it would take for a terrorist thinking in that realm to actually do damage to systems, to personnel, to people, to communities. And we don't do that in the cyber realm. We just assume that that threat isn't there, or if it is there, we can turn the laptop off. So I don't think that right now we watch what takes place on the internet. I don't think we understand the impact of the intrusions, whether it be from the potential counterterrorism actor, from the Foreign Intelligence Service, or from an advanced or organized criminal syndicate. I think, once again, we just believe that that network can be shut off and it really doesn't pose any significant threat. I think there's a lot of technologies that aren't set up correctly. I don't think in many cases the protocols are set up correctly. But I would take you back even to a lower level, base understanding and awareness. So I think there's a lot of individuals and companies, entities and organizations, once again, you're only as strong as your weakest link, that don't practice good cybersecurity, don't practice good cyber hygiene, don't have security protocols or procedures in place, and don't really think of the cybersecurity issue as an issue. They think of it more as a violation of a policy than they do about the potential impact that could take place. And it's evident as we go out every single day and knock on doors to tell people they've been intruded, that one, they don't know they've been intruded, and two, it's the first time that their entity, back with the analogy of after 9/11, has come together to see how they're going to respond or how they're going to mitigate and clean up after a cyber attack. Under our victim witness assistance program from the Department of Justice, we believe that every time somebody's intruded on, that they should get a knock from the FBI in a major case or a major intrusion. So if I recognize an entity and I know I can get to a government agency, a department, a corporation, an individual from a significant threat, then I'll reach out and talk to them. Obviously, when thousands of attacks are happening every day, we don't have the resources to come out and knock on 1,000 doors. But I think that responsibility resides in us working with our partners to get the Department of Homeland Security to put out public service announcements, to get the antivirus companies who run the software and update their signatures so that either directly or indirectly the U.S. population and citizens are aware along with our global partners. So there's no requirement to report, and in many cases, companies and entities take that option. So yes, we are seeing instances where they're not reporting, but a little different dynamic is going on right now. For instance, we're going out more often and knocking on a door for the first time, and it's the first idea or insight that a company or entity has that they've actually been intruded or compromised. Perhaps they've taken the tact that it may be better for them in their positioning and the stakeholders that they have to protect, that the reporting is better left undone. It makes it more difficult. If companies aren't reporting, if nations aren't reporting, and I know all countries are struggling with this issue, then it's hard to say how much was actually lost, how much damage was actually done. What did it cost for cleanup? What did it cost to rebuild the systems? Was intellectual property rights lost? Was research and development lost? What about the things that you really can't put a handle on? Your company employees being victims of identity theft. What does that do once your system's been intruded to knock down productivity? Well, the thing that's done the most is opened up many more vulnerabilities. So as we become wireless and more dependent on interconnectivity 24/7, those vulnerabilities are still there. For instance, if we talk about mobile phones and mobile phones and iPads, we don't have antivirus for either one of those. And many times the information that resides on your personal computer is something that you're going to store, especially now that storage is getting so much less expensive on your iPhone or on your tablet. You want those things that you have to come with you. So the best way to attack a device is or a place or a person or a thing or an entity is to go where you have an opening or a vulnerability. And a device that does not have antivirus software is more vulnerable than one that does. If I could change anything, I'd change how programmers think and how products are built. I'd try to incentivize, the rush to market because you have the newest innovation to the rush with the stronger security. I try to change the dynamic that we accept that source code is going to be faulty or wrong and it's going to have vulnerabilities, and that we build security into our applications, our systems, our hardware, our firmware, instead of trying to bolt it on afterwards. I don't think there's a technical solution. If there was one, we'd be selling it right now to make sure that the entire United States and our global partners were secure. But I think it means, once again, we have to shift from protecting the systems, which right now there is, once again, no impenetrable system, to where we think about putting the information. If the information isn't available on your device, on your system, on your network, then it can't be taken. And a good rule of thumb is, if your system was to be penetrated today, what on that system would you be devastated that had been lost or taken?
The government is still really focused on protecting the data and making sure that sensitive data doesn't get out, and that the right people who are supposed to have access to the data are the only ones that have access to it. And so that really hasn't changed. What has changed is how challenging a problem that is. And there's a couple of factors that are leading to it making it more difficult. The first is just the continued rapid growth in unstructured data. In government organizations as well as private sector organizations, unstructured data in particular is growing at over 60% year over year. So there's just lots more of it to have to worry about protecting. And then the other big trend that we see out there that I think is adding an additional challenge is the rise of mobile devices, the use of mobile devices, all different kinds, whether that be smartphones or tablets, and some of the dynamics that are going on around mobile devices. So more data to worry about protecting, and that data is now being used on many more different kinds of devices, to include mobile devices.
Add to that now this move to cloud computing, and in the case of the federal government, the cloud-first policy. Cloud has the opportunity actually to make us more secure, done properly. Considering the technology, the legal, the policy, the security, and the privacy issues associated with cloud, in a lot of ways has an opportunity to improve upon our security profile. I worry a little bit about the fact that some may rush to the implementation without having fully thought through the architecture and what's necessary to be able to achieve the desired outcome. We've had that problem even when we were first in desktops. Dan, as you will recall, people were more interested in the features and functionality and whistles and bells than they were necessarily about security. So there was a rush into this. We're seeing this even in the world of mobility today. The rush to download applications without doing sufficient due diligence to know where they came from. That's a target vector for the adversary today, is attaching malware to mobile applications. That's a concern. Add to that challenge the phenomenon now of the move to try and understand how best to accommodate the bring your own device issue that we have, not just in the government, but in the private sector and across all user constituency stakeholder groups. This challenge continues to be exacerbated. And so it is absolutely imperative that we facilitate an environment that fosters innovation in addressing these challenges.
I think the biggest change is moving to the cloud. Everything's going into the cloud, going into software as a service, infrastructure as a service type offerings, the mobile devices being used for corporate purposes that are personally owned devices, the need and appetite of the employees where they want to be able to use their own personal devices. So organizations are trying to accommodate that, hoping that it will actually translate into more productivity, happier workers. So they're trying to accommodate that through what they call BYOD solutions, which are bring your own device solutions, but at what cost?
People have to realize that as these devices have more and more capabilities, the same capabilities that their PC on their desk has, they have to think about them in the same way. And that's not just with antivirus and the classic security, it's also how you manage that device. If you think about it, on your desktop PC, that's a managed device, right? Your company, your organization, your agency, when they issue you that device, they've got it pre-installed with the operating system, with the applications that you're allowed to use. They have policies that enforce password protection. There are files that you can and can't access in different ways at different times. And so really all of those, not only the security, but also the management capability has to be there on those mobile devices too, if they're going to have the same sensitive work data as your desktop PC does.
The cart before the horse syndrome is more apparent than not. And everybody likes the new shiny whatever it is, whether it's a new shiny device, the new shiny technology. They want the bragging rights to be able to say, well, look at me, I have, my new iPhone or my new Android or, the latest and greatest of whatever. And what they're doing is they're allowing these types of solutions and technologies into their environments, whether it's a government environment or it's a private or public sector environment. And what happens is they haven't really figured out two things. What is the strategy that organization or agency should be taking to allow these technologies in, and weighting what the risk appetite is to allow these technologies in. So they haven't vetted out really whether this is something that will actually help their business or could really damage the business.
I spoke on mobility a few weeks back, and I asked people in the audience, how many of you have in addition to your laptop or your desktop, how many of you have a smartphone? Virtually everybody's hand went up. I said, okay, in addition to device on your desk, your smartphone, how many of you have a tablet? 2/3 of the room raised their hand. I said, okay, in addition to those 3 devices, how many of you have a 4th device of some kind, either another smartphone or a second tablet? And probably 1/3 of the room raised their hand that they have 4 different devices. In this particular audience, they were all government. They were all government. Now, our government CIOs have enough work to do without having to figure out how to manage 4 different devices for each of their employees, right? So they are absolutely beginning to realize that they need to take a different approach. I think they're still trying to work out how to best do that and still really protect that information, but make it available at the same time.
How about if every member of Congress had a link on their constituent homepage, their website, that pointed to the National CyberSecurity Alliance or some other nonprofit organization that can give people advice on basic fundamental best practices that they can implement in their own home, in their small business, or wherever to help better protect themselves. That's leading. But every department and agency, similarly, having a place where people can go to get basic fundamental information on how better to protect themselves. How about let's get and build on some of the work that's been done in Australia, and some of the work in some of our US-based internet service providers to improve upon our identify and notify capabilities for malware and other malicious activity. There are things that we can be doing together to improve upon this. It's not going to fix it. At the same time, private industry has to continue to invest in innovation. We have to be able to deliver solutions into the marketplace that deals with this explosion in the mobile world that we could never have contemplated, the demand, the scale for voice, for data, for video. And it's not going to get less, it's going to get more.
So we have to start thinking about configuration management differently and thinking about security differently. And most of the IT directors, the CIOs that I talk to in the government, they don't really have any desire to manage a lot more devices right? They're already overworked as it is, but they know that they have to protect and manage what's important. So at Symantec, we talk about being information-centric, not system-centric, right? Most CIOs don't want to manage and protect your version of Angry Birds or Words with Friends, right? What they really have to protect is any kind of important agency-related data, and sensitive applications that are residing on that mobile device. And so having the ability to do that is really important, and having the mindset that that's what you need to do.